Hello everyone, welcome back to Reading for Vocabulary. I'm Brian Stewart. It's good to see you again. We're on Lesson 2 in Level D of Reading for Vocabulary. Do you remember in Lesson 1 we talked about a cool job? That's being an architect. Well, in Lesson 2, let's take a look at some amazing architecture. We're going to learn about famous architecture in the world. We can think of famous buildings or structures that were built in history and that we remember. Do you know some of them? Let's go through some of the wonders of the world, famous buildings and structures. For example, do you know this one? You probably do. If you've ever read about Egypt, especially ancient Egypt, you will know what these structures are. There's actually two. The first one here is the Great Pyramid of Giza. The Great Pyramid of Giza. Giza is a place in Egypt where there are many pyramids. And these, of course, are tombs where the dead kings or pharaohs of the Egyptians were put into these pyramids. And of course, the other famous structure is the Sphinx. The Sphinx, which is also very famous. Okay. The next one is, do you know this one? Of course, it's the Eiffel Tower. Eiffel Tower in Paris. France, whenever people think about France or think of pictures of France, and especially Paris, we usually think of the Eiffel Tower. It's a landmark. A landmark. Most of these buildings, the pyramids, the Sphinx, the Eiffel Tower, these are landmarks. In Seoul, what is a famous landmark? Of course, Namsan Tower, or now they call it Seoul Tower, right? So that is a famous landmark. You see it, you say, oh, I know where I am, and I know that this is famous for being in this city. So the Eiffel Tower is a famous landmark in Paris. Also, a very famous landmark in China, many people think about it, is the Great Wall, built a long, long time ago, hundreds of years ago, to keep the barbarians of the north out of China. The Great Wall of China, one of the biggest, most impressive pieces of architecture in the world. You can see it from space. Wow. Okay. The next one, the South Facade. The South Facade of the White House. So, in other words, if you look at the White House, if you think of Washington, D.C., the U.S. government, especially the president, then we instantly recognize this image because of the building. It's a unique style of building. And this, of course, is the south side. Facade is the south side of a building. And that's the front entrance, basically. Okay. Next, Machu Picchu. Have you heard of Machu Picchu? That name sounds kind of funny, right? That name sounds kind of cool. This is a very mysterious city. It's not just one building. It was a whole city built out of stone. All the people disappeared hundreds of years ago. We're still, archaeologists, scientists are still trying to figure out who were they? Why did they leave? What happened? We still don't know. It's very mysterious. And of course, this is in South America. It's Machu Picchu on the top of a high mountain. Okay. The last one here is the Taj Mahal in India. Maybe you've heard of this. This is a very famous symbol for love because a prince built this huge building because of his love for his lover, the woman that he loved. So he built this very beautiful building, and it still stands today, and it's a very big tourist attraction, and it's a symbol of love. The Taj Mahal in India. Okay, those are some examples of famous architecture in the world. Many of them are famous. I'm sure you've probably heard of them before. But let's take a look now at the vocabulary we're going to need in order to read the passage. The first word that we're going to talk about here is defined as a structure. A structure, some type of building, could be small, could be big. A structure we put dead people in. Sounds kind of funny, we put dead people in it. But of course, when somebody dies, you know, there's the question of what to do with the person's body after they've died, right? In some cases, they put them under the ground. They bury them underground. That would be a grave. Some people, they don't want their body to be put in the ground. They would want to be burned, right, by fire, and that's cremate, to cremate. This is a great subject, huh? Very exciting subject. But anyway, graves, cremate. But this is another way, another type of putting the dead body, and this is called a tomb. A tomb is usually above ground. It's a small building like this. It might have a door or it might not have a door, but sometimes it has a door. You go in and there are spaces for the different bodies. Usually a family, like an important or rich family, will have a tomb, and they put their the coffins, the bodies, in different spaces on the wall, and the relatives or the descendants can go and visit the ancestors. Okay, that's a tomb. Okay, next word is something we store things in. Of course, you probably have many of these. Your mom has many of these in the refrigerator. She keeps food in them. You store something in them. They're called containers. And nowadays, many containers are made of plastic. Of course, containers can be made of metal, of wood, of all sorts of different materials. But most containers today are made of plastic. And we keep things in those containers. The next word is to pull over the ground. Now, they're just playing, but sometimes if you see a mom, the little boy or girl, they don't want to go, and mom's like pulling them along the ground. What's going on? She's dragging the kid on the ground, right? So it's kind of funny. To pull over the ground. Of course, they're just playing. Pipes that carry water and other liquids. So in a house, there are many pipes that carry hot water, that carry cold water. In a factory, pipes will carry lots of different types of liquids. What do we call those? We call that system of pipes plumbing. So really, it's not just the pipes, it's the system of pipes. If you think about your house, okay? If you think about your house, you have a kitchen sink, right? You have a toilet. Those are all different pipes for water coming in and water coming out. If there's a problem, you say, we have a problem with the plumbing. You need to call somebody over, a plumber, to fix it. Okay, next one. Whoa, this guy's rich. Right? He's like Mr. Scrooge, but he has a lot of money. Having a lot of money, don't call him Scrooge. We can say he's rich, right? Scrooge is a specific meaning. It means somebody who doesn't like to spend money. But not all rich people are Scrooges. Some rich people like to spend their money, right? But just if you have a lot of money, you are rich, okay? But we can be rich in other things too. You can be rich in love. You can be rich in knowledge, right? So you can be rich in a lot of different things. Okay, next one. To make someone or something do what you want. It's like a puppet master, okay? A puppet is a little doll that you can control by strings. These would be the puppets, and he's the puppet master. But this word that we're looking for, the puppet master, controls the puppets. He controls. If you make somebody or something do what you want, you are controlling a person or a thing. Okay? So that's to control. Now, something made of many parts. Of course, a building is made of many different parts. Many machines are made of different parts. Look at your computer. It has many different parts inside of it. It is a structure. Even a computer can be a type of structure. A building, of course, is obviously a type of structure. It is something that is made of many different parts. It has many parts to it. Made by people. This is very famous. I think it's near Qatar or near Abu Dhabi in the Middle East. It's very famous. I forgot exactly where this was. But they made the islands like this, and then they put houses on them. Wow, it's really cool. So made by people, but it's not natural. That's the point here. You're not sailing your boat and you go, oh, look, the island looks like a palm tree. It's not natural. It didn't happen by nature. It happened because it was man-made. People designed it. They thought about it, they designed it, and they made it. It's man-made. Our experience, our life on earth now, we are surrounded by man-made things. 3,000 years ago, most of the world was natural. There weren't many man-made things. But nowadays, there are many man-made things. Cities, resorts, buildings, everything in your house, man-made. Okay. A large triangle-shaped building. So we talked about this before, right? It's a triangle. It means it has 3 sides, right? A triangle. And it's shaped like a triangle. Of course, what did we call it? I'm not talking about this, right? I'm talking about this here. A large triangle-shaped building is a pyramid. And I talked about that, right? We said the pyramids of Giza, right? Not the Sphinx. The Sphinx is separate. It's there. It's part of the architecture. But the pyramid is what we're talking about here. Triangle-shaped building. Now, to be around for a period of time. He looks so happy, doesn't he? Okay, so to be around for a period of time is to last, right? He's thinking, how long is this lesson going to last? I hope you're not thinking that. I hope this is exciting. But he is not very excited about the lesson. He has a himdoro job, right? He has to teach this young boy, maybe math or something like that. But how long is it going to last? How long will it be around? Will it be around for 1 week, 1 month, 100 years? How long will something last? How long will it last? Okay, next one. A building where people practice religion. So, of course, many people in the world are religious, and there are different religions. There are different buildings. One of those buildings is called a church. People who are Christian go to a church. People who are Jewish go to a temple or synagogue. People who are Muslim, they go to a mosque. Okay, so there are many different buildings where people practice religion. This one, we can see it's Christian because of the cross, so we call it a church. But different religions will call their buildings different names. This is for the Christian religion. Okay. A set of steps built between 2 floors. So if you have steps like this built between 2 floors, what can we call it? We can call it stairs. And notice the S, because there are many of them, right? So we always talk about it in the plural, because of course you have to have many stairs, not just one. If you had only one, that wouldn't be stairs, right? You'd have to jump up there. Can you jump that high? You can't. So we need a series. We need many steps. We need many stairs to go from one floor to the next floor. Stairs. Next one. A passage built underground. Of course, in Korea, you can find many of those. In Seoul, there are many of these. You know, Korea has many mountains. And the roads have to go, straight. But there's a mountain. So you need to make what through the mountain? You need to make a tunnel. So you make a tunnel through the mountain so the road doesn't have to go up, and around, and it takes too long. Just go straight through the mountain and make a tunnel. Okay. A large machine that moves dirt or rock. Okay? What is this machine? We call it a bulldozer. But to tell you the truth, this isn't actually a bulldozer. I actually worked at a company where there were many machines like this when I was in America. We call this actually a front-end loader. Front-end loader. A bulldozer has a big blade on the front, and it can move up and down, but it doesn't scoop up dirt. A bulldozer pushes dirt. So a bulldozer is one of those machines you see that pushes dirt in front of it. This is a front-end loader. It's used for scooping up dirt and putting it into a big truck. But a large machine that moves dirt or rock, that would be a bulldozer. It just pushes it out of the way. Okay. Something that makes us wonder. A lot of the things that we saw before, like the pyramids of Giza, the Eiffel Tower, the Taj Mahal, when we see those, we go, wow, that's amazing. How did people build that, right? It makes us imagine what people a long time ago, how they lived, how they could do those types of things. Maybe not so much for the Eiffel Tower, but for the pyramids, sure. And also for this one, this is Stonehenge in England. Something that makes us wonder, we can call it a marvel. It is a marvel, right? And that's where the word marvelous comes from, right? O-U-S, by the way, means full of. So if something is full of marvel, it is full of wonder, right? It is marvel. It is a marvel. That's noun. Adjective, it is marvelous. You look marvelous. Okay? So for example. Okay, next one. To make objects by cutting wood or stone. So there are some types of artists that make works of art from wood or stone. What are they doing? They are carving. They carve the wood, they carve the stone to make beautiful, marvelous shapes. Okay, so they carve. You can carve soap. But be careful with the knife, right? Be careful. You can carve soap to make little statues, okay? But you can carve something to make a piece of art. Okay, now let's review the words we just learned. Let's see how well you remember that with an exercise. So let's take a look. Our instructions are here. Choose the word that best completes the sentence. So our words are here under each sentence, and we need to fill in the blank with one of these words. Number 1, Johnny, and an exclamation mark. So I have to say, Johnny, don't beep your blanket in the dirt. Think about little Johnny. He has a blanket, right? The blanket should be clean, but what is he doing? He's doing something, maybe he's walking, and the blanket is in the dirt. What's happening? Don't control your blanket in the dirt. That doesn't make sense. Don't don't drag your blanket in the dirt. If you have a blanket, right, and you're not holding on to it like this, you just hold one end and the other end is on the ground and you're walking along, the blanket is dragging in the dirt and it's getting dirty. Mom doesn't like this. Don't do that, okay? So, don't drag your blanket in the dirt. Not don't run, that doesn't make sense. Don't cut your blanket in the dirt. Why would you cut your blanket? That doesn't make sense. The best answer is drag. Don't drag your blanket in the dirt. Mom doesn't like it. It gets very dirty. Okay, number 2. We need a beep for the rest of the food. So imagine this. You're eating lunch, right? But you're full. Pebula, right? I can't eat anymore, right? No more pebula. So you have, but there's food left. What are you going to do with it? You're going to throw it away? No, that's wasteful. You're going to store it and put it in the refrigerator. What do you put it in? We need something for the rest of the food. We need something to put the food in. What is it? A structure? A structure like a small building? No, we don't put it in a small building. Do we need a container? Yes, that's what we talked about. When I said container, I said your mom probably has many containers in the refrigerator. She keeps food in them. So we need a container for the rest of the food. Do we need a tomb? No, don't keep your food in a tomb. That's weird, okay? And church. Don't keep your food in a church. I mean, you might be able to eat food in a church, but that's kind of rude. Don't do that. They do eat one type of food in the church, but that's a long story. Anyway, so the best word is, of course, container. We need a container for the rest of the food. You need something to store your food in. That's a container. Okay, number 3. My uncle owns a jet airplane. Wow. The uncle is he has a lot of money. If he has a jet airplane, he has a lot of money. What do we say? A person who has a lot of money, he is so what? He is so architect? Doesn't make sense. That's not correct grammar anyway. He is so man-made? That's just silly. His mom and his dad made him? No, we don't say that. He is so rich because he owns a jet airplane. Like I said, that costs a lot of money. He is so handsome. It doesn't matter if he's handsome or ugly. If he owns a plane, anybody can own a plane. It doesn't matter what they look like. What matters is how much money they have. You need a lot of money to own a jet airplane. So he is so rich. Number 4, this new car is hard to beep. It is too big. Of course you don't drive, but if you have a small car is easy to drive. You can turn it very quickly. But a big car, it takes more power. Now when you're driving it, you have to steer it different places. You have to try to what? You have to understand your car? Oh, car, I understand you. No, we don't worry about that. It's a machine. We don't worry about understanding the car. We need to sit hard to sit. You sit your car. Sit, car. No, that's strange. The car is just a machine. It's hard to control. Okay, that's the answer. Because a big car, right? You need a lot of power to turn it, or to get it to go, or to get it to stop. So that's the right answer. This new car is hard to control. It's too big. A big car is harder to control, not hard to look. So the answer is this car is hard to control. It is too big. Moving on, number 5, the toilet is broken. When we talked about this word, I talked about that. I said you have many pipes coming in your house and going out of your house. Your sink, your toilet. We need new, if the toilet is broken, if those pipes are broken, what do we call that system of pipes? If you remember, we called it plumbing. We need new plumbing. Not bulldozers, not containers, not churches. Plumbing. Plumbing is the system of pipes in your house that controls your sink, your toilet. That's about it in your house. Your shower. Okay. 6. Rob built a big what out of wooden blocks? He built what? He built a big something. He used wooden blocks to build it. It's probably a structure, because a structure is like a building. You don't build plumbing out of wooden blocks. Wood does not make for good plumbing, right? Because it doesn't hold water very well. It's very hard to shape wood. Built a big man-made, that's an adjective, not a noun. And dedication, that doesn't fit. That doesn't make sense. The best one, of course, is you build a structure. A structure, like I said, is a building. It could be a small building. It could be a large building. Okay? So he built a structure out of wooden blocks. Now, number 7. When my grandfather died, we built a what for his body? Remember, we talked about that. That was our first word. When somebody dies, people think, well, what to do with the body? I talked about 3 different ways. Grave, cremate, or what was the last one? The last one was tomb. When my grandfather died, we built a tomb for his body. And that's actually the only answer. Because you don't build a grave, you dig a grave. You don't build a cremate. That doesn't make sense. But a tomb is like a structure. So you build a structure, you build a tomb. So because of this, really the only possibility is tomb. Well, you wouldn't build a tunnel or an apartment for a dead body, right? You would build a tomb. Okay, number 8. The beep mountain isn't as big as a real mountain. So think about that. A real mountain, in this case, real can be natural. Okay, so what's the opposite of natural? The opposite of natural is man-made. Okay, so the man-made mountain isn't as big as a real mountain. If you think about it, people might make a mountain for some reason, part of the neighborhood, part of a park, but it's very difficult to make a mountain as big as a real or natural mountain, right? So the man-made mountain isn't as big as a real mountain. Okay, whew. That wraps up the vocabulary section of Lesson 2. Let's take a short break. We'll come back and take a look at the reading. Don't go away. Okay, welcome back. Let's go over the reading section for Lesson 2. We're talking about famous architecture. Let's take a look at the reading passage. Now, we start off here saying man-made structures. So wow, we have our vocabulary right away. 2 of them, right? First, man-made. Things that are made by men, or people, I should say humans, women and men, and they're structures, they're buildings, right? So man-made structures have many uses. Of course, they're very functional. They have many functions, they have many uses. For example, if we say there are many uses, what are examples of those uses? Well, first we have store our food. We store our food in man-made structures. If you're driving through the farmland, you see these big towers, these big round towers. They're called silos. And people keep grain in those. So we store our food in structures. We store our clothes in structures. We put dead people in structures, right? They help us control nature. Not the dead people, but the structures, okay? So let's review this. Man-made structures have many uses. What are the uses? 1, we store our food and clothes in them. That's 2. And the 3rd, we put dead people in them. And 4th, they help us control nature. If you think about that, they, of course, refer back to man-made structures. They help us control nature. Think about that. If you don't have a house, where are you going to sleep? You have to sleep outside under the stars. If it rains, you're going to get wet. So of course your house or your apartment building helps us control nature. It keeps us warm. It keeps us dry, right? It keeps us comfortable. We can control nature by building buildings. Okay? So those are some important uses of man-made structures. They. Now, of course, we're talking about man-made structures. We're using a lot of pronouns here. They, referring back to man-made structures. They can last thousands of years. So some man-made structures can last thousands of years. I don't think your apartment building, where you're living now, will last for 1,000 years. You know, it'll probably be destroyed after maybe a few decades, but certainly after a couple hundred years, it'll be gone. Replaced by something else, who knows? But some structures last thousands of years. These pyramids were built more than 3,000 years ago. Think about that. That's a really long time, and they're still standing. Of course, they don't look as nice as they did 3,000 years ago, but they're still there. They can be made of stone, bricks, or wood. So we can make structures out of many different types of materials, right? Stone, bricks, or wood. Of course, nowadays we can use man-made materials like steel, plastic, glass. We also make structures out of those. There are famous structures all over the world, and we looked at some of them, right? Of course, we saw the pyramids as one of the examples of a famous structure all over the world. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built 4,550 years ago, right? I said more than 3,000 years ago. 4,550 years ago to be exact. Okay, so if we're talking about exactly when it was built, that's a really long time ago, right? That's before the Greeks, before the Roman Empire, right? That's really a long time ago. And it's still standing today. It was built as a tomb for an Egyptian king. The Egyptian kings were called pharaohs, right? And they were very powerful men, right? And they thought that they were almost like gods. So when they died, they wanted to build a huge, impressive structure so the people would remember them and still maybe worship them. So they built these big buildings, and inside that building is a tomb just for one person. Of course, sometimes his servants followed him and they killed the servants so the servants could help the king after death. That was the idea. So maybe not just one person, but it was only built for one person to be a main person, the important person, the king, to be buried in. So this huge structure was built as a tomb for one king. It was the tallest structure in the world for over 3,800 or 3,800 years. When you see big numbers like this, especially this, you can say either 3,800 or use the comma and say 3,800 years. So 3,800 years. It was the tallest building in the world, okay, after it was built. So it was the tallest man-made structure in the world for that long of time. Okay, there were no bulldozers back then. So when we look at the pyramid and we think, wow, that was built 4,550 years ago, how did they build it? They didn't have bulldozers, right? They didn't have big machines that could move earth. Egyptians cut large blocks of stone and dragged them to the pyramid. So they didn't have machines to help them. They had to cut them by hand, by the tools that they had, and then they had to use people or animals to drag these blocks across the desert to build this thing. That's amazing when we think about it. They used ropes to pull the rocks into place. And then once they got the rocks there, they had to get them up like a ramp, a walkway to get them up and put them into place. But think about that. How did they do that? They didn't have machines. They just had people power and maybe animal power and ropes. Okay? That's an amazing, amazing feat, an amazing accomplishment. Today, even using machines, it would take many years to build it again. So if we think about that today, if we were to try to duplicate that, if we were to try to copy that using our modern technology and our modern machines, it would still take us many years to build one of these things. I think back in the days of the Egyptians, it took them like 30 years, maybe a little bit more than 30 years to build a tomb. And that was back then, using just people power and maybe animal power. Okay. Imagine living in a mountain. That's how people lived in the city of Petra. They didn't live in caves. This is not a picture of the city of Petra. Petra is a very famous city in what is now Turkey, what we call the country of Turkey. You may have seen it in a movie. I think it was in one of the Indiana Jones movies. At the end of the movie, it's very beautiful. They carved the city out of the mountain. So people actually lived inside the mountain, but they carved beautiful shapes on the outside, and that was the outside of their city. So they lived actually in a mountain in the city of Petra. It wasn't really caves. They carved a whole city. They carved, remember we talked about carving when you cut into wood or stone or really anything. Even if you cut into soap, for example, you're carving. So you carved something out. It wasn't a natural cave, it was man-made. They carved a whole city out of a mountain. There were churches, apartments, stores, and more. So there are all these different types of places inside the building that they carved out of the building. It was a really amazing city. Okay, this is not Petra. This is the pyramids at Giza, and we can see the back of the Sphinx here, so we know there's another pyramid over there. There's actually 3 main pyramids at Giza. 1, 2, and the other one is that way. But of course, many tourists are walking around, and really, it's a marvel. It's amazing when we think about how long ago it was that the Egyptians built this, and the fact that it's still standing today. It's really amazing. Okay, moving on. We're coming back to Petra. When we talk about they, we're talking about the citizens of Petra, the city in Turkey that we were talking about, that they carved into the mountain. So why did they build their city in a mountain? Why did they do that? Well, they were in the middle of the desert, right? They were in the middle of a desert. Right? There weren't many building materials around. They didn't have a lot of wood, right? They had a lot of stone. They could cut the stone and build their houses out of brick, but hey, why do that? It's easier just to carve into the mountain, right? Also, there wasn't much water. When it rained, tunnels carried the water to buckets and other containers. So when they built their city into the mountain, right, they waited for the rain. And when it rained, they had tunnels in the mountain that the water would come down in the tunnel, and then it would carry it to where they had buckets, and they had other containers, maybe clay pots, and the water would go into these containers, and that way they could store water for long after it rained. They still had water. They were in the desert. They needed some way to store the rainwater. Okay, so because they did that, there was water for everyone, and even more to sell, right? We think about now, it may be strange. We're going to buy water. Of course, we buy water now. We don't think that's strange. Maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we thought, buy water. Water's free. But nowadays, we buy water. Well, back then, in Petra, water was scarce, so they also sold water. Water was precious to them. Okay, and this was around 3,300 years ago. 3,300 years ago, or 3,300. You can say either way. 3,300 years ago, or 3,300 years ago. There was no modern plumbing back then. They didn't have modern plumbing, right? They had to make tunnels in the stone and collect their water in certain types of containers. So, it's very interesting. People were very smart even back then. We have a lot of ingenuity, a lot of smartness. Oh yeah, a lot of smarts. Okay, let's continue. Now, so far we've been talking about ancient marvels, ancient wonders. The pyramids, right? Very impressive, very amazing. Many tourists still go to see the pyramids. We talked about the city of Petra, which was built 3,300 years ago. But what about nowadays? Are there buildings that are marvels in the modern age? Well, you bet there are. There are many. One of them, a modern marvel, so one, A means one of those is the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, or sometimes people say UAE. So the Burj Khalifa, interesting name for the building. Why is this building famous? Well, let's read. It was finished in January 2010 and is the tallest building in the world. That's why it's famous. It has 57 elevators, 2,909 stairs, imagine counting all those, and 24,348 windows. Okay, so this is a very famous building because it's the tallest building in the world. And when we talk about the building, we can talk about how many windows it has, how many stairs it has, how many elevators it has. Let's just go over numbers here because sometimes people have a problem with numbers. This is easy. 57, no problem. What about this number? Before I was saying, you know, if you have a number like this, you can say 3,300, but that only works if it's 00. You cannot say 2,909. Don't say that. That's wrong, okay? You can't do it if they have to be both 0, 0, 0. You can't say it if it's 0 and another number. In that case, you must use 1,000. 2,909. Okay? What about this one? Oh, 힘들어. 어떻게 말해요? Right? So this one, just look at the comma, right? Just look at the first number before the comma and say it. It's 24. 24, that's easy, 24. The comma here means 1,000 because there's only 3 numbers. So 24,348. It's easy to say big numbers, okay? So 24,348 windows. That's a lot of windows. It's a very impressive building. There's a small picture of it here. We have another picture later on of it we'll show you. But it's a very impressive building. Okay. Now, think about this building. It's so big. What are some other amazing things we can say about it? Well, it takes. Here, it doesn't refer back to anything we talked about. When you're talking about how long something needs to be done, we can say it takes. It takes 1 hour to get home. It takes 5 minutes to finish this letter. Okay? So how long does it take? It takes. It takes 4 months to clean just the outside of the building. Wow. You can buy an apartment in the Burj Khalifa, sound like cauliflower, in the Burj Khalifa, but you better be rich. It costs $4,000 a square foot. What is a foot? A foot is about 12 inches. 12 inches is about that big. So think about that. This is a square foot. How much will you pay for that? $4,000. What is $4,000 in Korean won? It's sabegman won. Sabegman won for this much? Oh my gosh, that's really expensive, right? If your apartment, most apartments in Korea, about like 33 pyong, that's about 100 square meters. That's about 900 square feet. 9 times 4, that's 34. I can't even do the math. That's a lot of money, okay? That's a huge amount of money just for that small amount of area. Okay, but anyway, let's take a look here. It takes 4 months to clean just the outside of the building. So if they want to clean the outside, think about it, it takes 4 months. How long does it take you to clean your room? Hopefully just maybe an hour, less than an hour. But think about the whole building. They have to clean all the windows and everything. It takes 4 months to do that. And it's not just one person, it's a whole army of cleaners. Okay, you can buy an apartment, but you better be rich. You better be means you must be rich because it's so much. It's sabegman won for just 1 square foot, $4,000. Okay. Architects design more amazing structures every day. The Burj Khalifa is just one. There are many beautiful and amazing structures being built all over the world in many different cities. We will never forget the remarkable structures we have already built, but we won't stop trying to build bigger and better ones either. Now, this is an interesting word. We can say either or either. Don't worry about the pronunciation. It doesn't matter. Americans will pronounce it either way. Either, either. Don't worry about it. So, what we're talking about here is, of course, architects are designing more and more amazing structures. Of course, we won't forget the remarkable structures we have already built from ancient times, the pyramids, to more modern times, the Burj Khalifa, the Eiffel Tower, the Statue of Liberty, the White House in Washington, D.C. We've already built, but we won't stop trying to build bigger and better ones. So, what will happen in the future? In 10 years, what new and impressive buildings will be built? 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. We're always continuing to improve. Okay? Let's take a look at a little video of the Burj Khalifa and Khalifa. It's very impressive. We can see the clouds moving along, and of course the roads here. Of course, the Burj Khalifa stands in the middle of a city, right, in Dubai. So there's a whole city around it, and some tall skyscrapers or apartment buildings. They look very high, but they're very high, but they look so tiny compared to this huge, massive building. I mean, it would be amazing to go to Dubai and look at that building. Okay. Let's review and let's do some exercises to see how much we remember of the story. This story is about what? So again, always the first question is, what is the main topic of the story? What are we talking about here? Are we talking about tall structures, old structures, modern structures, or amazing structures? Well, we talked about the Burj Khalifa. It's a tall structure, but we also talked about the pyramids, and which is also tall, but we also talked about just different types of structures, right? They're not all tall, so we're not just talking about tall structures, we're talking about different interesting or amazing, marvelous structures. Actually, I just gave the answer, right? It's D. We're talking about amazing structures. The pyramids are amazing, right? Petra, the city carved in the mountain, it was amazing, and the Burj Khalifa is amazing. Old, we talked about old structures, but we also talked about new structures. We talked about one modern structure, but we also talked about old structures. So none of these answers fit, except they're all amazing. What can we say about all of these structures we talked about? They are all amazing. So that's the best answer. This story is about amazing structures. Okay, moving on to number 2. The beep is the tallest building in the world. So right now, what is the tallest building in the world? The Great Pyramid of Giza? Not now, because we're saying is. We're not saying was, we're saying is. That means right now. Chigum, right? So the Great Pyramid of Giza was the tallest building for 3,800 years, right? But it's not the tallest building anymore. So that's not right. It's the Burj Khalifa. That's the correct answer. Not the city of Petra. The city of Petra is amazing because it's built into a mountain, not because it's tall. And Dubai United Arab Emirates, that's a city. We don't say cities are tall, right? We say cities are big, okay? So the correct answer is Burj Khalifa. The Burj Khalifa is the tallest building in the world. Okay, next one. People in the city of Petra. Remember, Petra was the city I talked about. It's the city carved into a mountain in what is now Turkey. People in the city of Petra lived in caves. Did they live in caves? No. We said they weren't natural. Caves are natural, right? But they didn't live in natural caves. They carved their rooms in the mountain. They were man-made. Carved a statue out of a mountain? Nope. They used modern plumbing? No. They stored water to drink and sell? Yes, they did. Okay, that's the only true statement there. Okay, they didn't use modern plumbing. Modern plumbing is, metal pipes and valves and all those other things. They just carved their old plumbing was carving tunnels in the stone so that it would collect water, and then they would store water to drink, and they had so much water they could even sell it later on. Okay, so that's what the people in the city of Petra did. The only true statement is D. People in the city of Petra stored water to drink and sell. Number 4, the Great Pyramid of Giza. What's true about the Great Pyramid of Giza? It was built 3,800 years ago, or 3,800 years ago. Was it built with large bricks? Did it fall down 3,800 years ago? Or was it built as a tomb for an Egyptian king? Which is a true statement. Okay, was it built 3,800 years ago? No, it was built 4,550 years ago. It was the tallest building for 3,800 years, but it wasn't built 3,800 years ago. Was it built with large bricks, big bricks? No, it was built with huge stones, huge blocks of stone. So not big bricks. Did it fall down? No, it didn't fall down. It's still standing. You can go today or tomorrow. It takes you a while to get there. You can go there and be there tomorrow if you wanted, and you could see it. It's still there. It didn't fall down. So the only true statement, really, it was built as a tomb for an Egyptian king. We talked about that. The building was built for one person, the pharaoh, right? Maybe other people died in the building too to go follow the pharaoh into the afterlife, but it was built as a tomb for an Egyptian king. Okay. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built as a tomb for an Egyptian king. Okay, so we've come to the end of our lesson here. And of course, we've talked about famous architecture in the world. And we can see here 3 different examples of famous architecture in the world. Of course, we talked about the Great Wall of China, the Pyramids of Giza, and the Eiffel Tower in Paris. But we also talked about many other things. We talked about the city of Petra. Look it up on the internet. It's a really amazing city. And you can also go there these days too as a tourist attraction. We also talked about modern famous architecture in the world. The example is the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Many new and amazing interesting buildings are being built all the time. So what new building will be built in the future? Maybe if you become an architect, you can have a part in building an amazing building in the world. That's something to think about. Okay, well, we'll leave you with that thought, and we'll see you guys next time. Take care.